They were supposed to be here to applaud an agreement to create safe zones in Syria. Instead, the Syrian opposition rejected it. Iran are criminals, this representative of the opposition says. Iran, along with Russia and Turkey, are the guarantors of the agreement to create safe zones in Syria. That means they commit to do all they can to implement it and ensure the deal is not broken. In these zones, fighting is to be suspended, and international observers will monitor them, allowing refugees to return. They're to be set up in the rebel-held province of Idlib, which was recently hit by a toxic gas attack, blamed on the regime, but which Damascus denies. Also in the province of Homs in central Syria, and in the Damascus suburb of Eastern Ghouta, where civilians were hit in a chemical attack in 2013. And the fourth safe zone will be in Daraa in the south, where peaceful protests 6 years ago led to war. For the UN, it's good news.
The most important thing is that this initiative today is actually a step in the right direction because it's pushing for a concrete de-escalation in addition to the ceasefire in 4 areas.
The Syrian regime and opposition have yet to sign the deal, but the regime appears supportive.
The Syrian Arab Republic supports the Russian initiative.
But for the opposition, the deal was unacceptable.
We refuse any role for Iran and militias affiliated with it. We refuse for Iran to play any role as guarantor, considering it is a nation with hostilities against the Syrian people.
They fear that with Iran backing the deal, it will legitimize the presence of Tehran's militia proxies in Syria.
President Trump's first overseas trip will see him visiting the capitals of 3 of the world's major religions.
2 weeks from now, President Trump will touch down in Riyadh, the first leg on his first foreign trip, which will then take him to Jerusalem and the Vatican, ahead of G7 and NATO meetings in Europe. Senior U.S. officials said Saudi Arabia is the first stop because of its preeminence in the region and because it is the birthplace of Islam, custodian of its 2 holiest sites.
And it is there that we will begin to construct a new foundation of cooperation and support with our Muslim allies to combat extremism, terrorism, and violence.
Saudi officials told Fox News it is unprecedented for an American president to meet, as this one will, first with the Saudi king, then with allies on the Gulf Cooperation Council, then with scores of Arab and Muslim heads of state converging on Riyadh to welcome the new president and the promise of reinvigorated U.S. leadership in the region, which the Saudis and other Arab allies considered grossly lacking under President Obama.
We believe that President Trump is a man of strong character and conviction. We believe that he has vision. We believe that he has courage. We believe that he is decisive. We believe that he is unconventional in his thinking, not tied to traditional thought patterns, which makes him creative.
Aides said that in Jerusalem, Mr. Trump will do Mideast diplomacy differently this time, but offered no details as to how. Analysts said if successful, the trip will achieve 3 goals: shoring up alliances against al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Iran, making headway on the Israeli-Palestinian issue, and recasting the president as sensitive to world religions, eliminating the charge that he is anti-Muslim.
President Trump has made clear that Iran is the enemy, and the Saudis and the Israelis are our friends, and I think under President Obama, it seems sometimes the other way around.
هدف رئيسي للنظام الإيراني، الوصول لقبلة المسلمين هدف رئيسي للنظام الإيراني. لن ننتظر حتى تصبح المعركة في السعودية، بل سوف نعمل لكي تكون معركة لديهم في إيران وليس في السعودية.
Tehran has condemned anti-Iran remarks by the Saudi Deputy Crown Prince, saying Riyadh is seeking tensions in the region. The reaction was made to Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who said he would protect his kingdom from Iran's efforts to dominate the Muslim world. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Behram Qasemi said those statements were indication that Saudi Arabia is pursuing warmongering policies in the region. The high-ranking diplomat added that Salman's remarks on Iran prove that Saudis have no knowledge of the situation in the Middle East. Elsewhere in the statement, Qasemi reiterated that Tehran always seeks common grounds for constructive regional cooperation.
Now, Saudi Arabia says that U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has taken steps to advance the sales of precision-guided missiles to Riyadh. Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir said weapons sale is in process of working notification for the U.S. Congress. Sale, which has been controversial because of rising civilian deaths in the Saudi war in neighboring Yemen, is expected to include over $1 billion worth of the weapons. Jubeir made the remarks just a day after Donald Trump announced that his first foreign trip would include Saudi Arabia and Israel. A senior U.S. administration official said that the aim of the trip was to reverse a trend of America's disengagement from Persian Gulf countries, in particular Saudi Arabia.
Non-proliferation experts have long suspected North Korea and Iran are sharing expertise when it comes to their rogue missile programs.
The very first missiles we saw in Iran were simply copies of North Korean missiles. And over the years, we've seen photographs of North Korean and Iranian officials in each other's countries, and we've seen all kinds of common hardware and design approaches.
When Iran tested a ballistic missile in late January, the Pentagon said it was based on North Korean design. Last summer, Iran conducted another missile launch similar to a North Korean Musadon, the most advanced missile Pyongyang has tested to date. North Korea's Taepodong missile looks almost identical to Iran's Shahab missile.
In the past, we would see things in North Korea and they would show up in Iran. In recent years, we've seen some small things appear in Iran first and then show up in North Korea. And so that raises the question of whether the trade, which started off mostly as North Korea to Iran, has started to reverse.
Tuesday, Iran tried to test a cruise missile from a midget submarine in the Strait of Hormuz, raising eyebrows at the Pentagon. The launch failed, but the submarine is a North Korean design. Only 2 countries in the world deployed that kind of sub, North Korea and Iran. Midget subs operate in shallow waters where they can be very sneaky. In fact, a North Korean midget sub sank a South Korean frigate in 2010. During testimony last week, Admiral Harry Harris, the head of American forces in the Pacific, warned the U.S. has no land-based short or medium-range missiles because it is a signatory to the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces, or INF Treaty of 1987, which Iran and North Korea are not.
We are being taken to the cleaners by countries that are not signatories to the INF.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is trying to garner support for more UN sanctions against North Korea. He met with Asian leaders today at the State Department. The Federation of American Scientists has documented since the 1980s how Iranian oil and cash helped North Korea make progress with its missile program. Now some of those advances are showing up back in Iran.
Following North Korea's unusual criticism against China Wednesday that Beijing crossed the line with its reckless remarks on the regime's nuclear program, the Chinese government issued a response. During a regular briefing on Thursday, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Geng Shuang said, quote, China's stance on North Korea has always been consistent and clear, and its stance to continue developing a good relation with Pyongyang stands the same. The official also added that China's objective is to keep the Korean peninsula peaceful by seeking denuclearization through dialogue.
Meanwhile, the U.S. continues its military buildup amid a flare-up of regional tensions. Its military on Wednesday released video footage showing the USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier strike fleet leading South Korean warships in drills in the Western Pacific. The Carl Vinson strike group arrived in the Korean Peninsula waters on April the 29th and has been holding training exercises with South Korea's Navy.
US fighter jets have again intercepted Russian warplanes off the coast of Alaska, the 5th such incident in a number of weeks. The 2 Russian bombers were flanked by a pair of fighter jets, making the fleet unusually large. The military planes were flying in international airspace, but just 50 miles from the US coast, part of the US air defense zone. A spy plane also flew into the area, but was not intercepted. At the end of April, Russian bombers flew into the same defense zone near Alaska for 4 consecutive days, the first incident since 2014.
A security alert has gone out to America's trucking industry about stolen trucks being used as weapons.
A warning from the TSA deals with attacks using trucks to ram into crowds. It highlights last July's attack in Nice, France. 86 people were killed, another 400 injured, when a man who claimed loyalty to ISIS drove a rented truck through a crowd at a Bastille Day celebration. In this country, a student drove his car into a crowd at Ohio State University last year, injuring 11 people and then stabbing at least one person. He was also inspired by ISIS. The 6-page report from TSA went out to truck and bus companies as well as school bus operators and cited 17 vehicle attacks worldwide since 2014. 173 people were killed and 667 injured in the attacks. Police departments across the country have been on high alert for these types of attacks. They have changed how security is provided, from everything from parades to the inauguration of President Trump. Many of these attacks, called low-tech, have been carried out by so-called lone wolves, which makes it difficult for police and intelligence agencies to detect any planning. In a statement, the TSA pointed out that no community, large or small, rural or urban, is immune to a vehicle attack. Police departments in the U.S. are aware of the threat. Scott, the TSA is urging people to be alert for strange activity that may signal a truck attack.
Amnesty International has warned that growing violence between police and criminals in Brazil is threatening to spiral out of control. And the report to the United Nations to human rights groups highlighted the recent spike in killings by real police, 182 in the first 2 months of the year. That is 78% more than the previous year.
Rio de Janeiro has this historical difference, which is insecurity, an insecurity that sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down. Sometimes measures are taken or policies that could lead to what is needed. But right now, it is clear that Rio de Janeiro needs the helping hand that President Michel Temer is offering.
Puerto Rico has declared a form of bankruptcy. It's the first time an American state or territory has ever done that. It's not clear yet just how much Puerto Rico will include in its filing, but it currently has $123 billion in debt and pension obligations. For context, when Detroit declared bankruptcy in 2013, its debt level was $18 billion. Of course, Detroit's a city and Puerto Rico's a territory, but the population of the latter is about the same as San Diego County. 60% of the island's people don't have a job or aren't looking for one. About half are enrolled in Medicaid. And it didn't help that Puerto Rico lost roughly 10% of its population over the past decade. Many moved to Florida and took their tax dollars with them. For the next step, the Supreme Court will assign a bankruptcy judge to the case. The courts will have to work out how much of their creditors' money will be paid back and the order they'll be paid.
Days before the election of his life, French presidential candidate Emmanuel Macron scored a coveted endorsement from former President Barack Obama.
Because of how important this election is, I also want you to know that I am supporting Emmanuel Macron to lead you forward. En marche. Vive la France.
Obama's endorsement comes as some are drawing comparisons between the French election and the 2016 U.S. race. France's nationalist candidate Marine Le Pen has been seen as more politically aligned with President Donald Trump. Perhaps knowing a Le Pen win could upset the stability of the EU, Obama deciding to weigh in.
He appeals to people's hopes and not their fears, and he is committed to a better future for the French people.
Knowing what's at stake, Obama has voiced his support of Macron before in this April 20th phone message.
It might be that last day of campaigning that
yeah, I do agree.
Makes all the difference.
With France just days away from the final round of the presidential election, tensions are running high, with both candidates the target of voter anger. The National Front's Marine Le Pen was attacked with eggs as she arrived at a campaign event. Protesters, they missed their target, but did leave her seeking shelter in a nearby building. Meantime, in Paris, protesters rallied against Emmanuel Macron. They were wearing masks of his face while throwing around piles of fake money, alluding to recent claims the independent candidate holds an offshore account in the Bahamas. Meanwhile, a new poll suggests the majority of young Europeans, and in particular the French, are ready to join a full-scale revolt against the EU's ruling elites. Maria Fanoshina has details.
If there is a large-scale uprising against your government, are you in? A large number of young Europeans answered yes to this question, which was asked as part of an online study. The countries with the most ready-to-rebel youth are ones which have already been seeing scenes like this one. Most of the 600,000 young people from more than 30 European countries who took part in the survey do not trust their political legal system, believe all or almost all politicians are corrupt, and are certain banks and money rule the world. The study also suggests a dramatic distrust in the media, religious organizations and even charities. And most of the people surveyed think things will only get worse.
Every year, I think these are issues that we must demand. We see that the situation is very difficult, and if there is someone that could bring change, it's this part of the youth that can give a better tomorrow to this land.
Behind this idea of openness that the government is pretending to promote, and behind the promise of a cut in political costs, there is a sly and arrogant attempt to control all the power.
We are here to demand our rights by saying that we are the future of the nation.
With so many reasons to get angry, it seems young people are left with only one solution.
It's great to be with you.
Making peace on an old warship. Donald Trump's dinner with American and Australian veterans was also the venue to calm the waters with Malcolm Turnbull, after reports that their first phone call was cut short in a row over the US taking refugees from Australian detention centres.
We had a good telephone call. We had a great call. You guys exaggerated that call. That was a big exaggeration. I want to tell you, we had a great call. I mean, we're not babies.
Exaggerated or not, this was their first face-to-face meeting, and a chance for Mr. Trump to revive ties with a Pacific ally starting to look as much towards Beijing as to Washington.
Together, we discussed crucial issues ranging from national security to trade, to immigration and enhanced economic cooperation. We reaffirmed the tremendous friendship between the United States and Australia.
Polls before the US election showed Australians preferred Hillary Clinton 7-1, and Mr. Trump's cancellation of the TPP trade deal was a blow to Canberra. But Malcolm Turnbull was all smiles.
Today, together, we condemn and we resist North Korea's reckless provocation. We fight together in Iraq and Afghanistan to defeat and to destroy the terrorists who threaten our way of life. From the mud of Hamel to the waters of the Coral Sea to the sands of the Middle East today, Australians and Americans stand shoulder to shoulder defending our freedoms.
President Trump signed an executive order today intended to roll back government restrictions on religious organizations.
President Trump today surrounded by religious leaders promising to give churches their voices back.
Under my administration, free speech does not end at the steps of a cathedral or a synagogue or any other house of worship.
His new executive order directs the IRS to relax enforcement of rules barring churches and other tax-exempt religious groups from political activity, like endorsing and campaigning for candidates. It also promises unspecified relief for organizations that claim a religious objection to an Obamacare mandate requiring them to cover contraception in their health care plans. But the order does not go as far as some faith leaders hoped and many activists feared. There is nothing in it that weakens Obama-era protections for gays, lesbians, and others.
Most importantly, I brought my Bible.
For President Trump, this is about showing some love to the evangelicals who helped propel him to the White House. The president winning their vote 81 to 16%.
We will not allow people of faith to be targeted, bullied, or silenced anymore.
Biotech giant Monsanto has been accused of hiring an army of internet trolls to counter negative comments. The allegation surfaced amid lawsuits claiming the company's products cause cancer, with Monsanto allegedly concealing potential risks, is the allegation. It's claimed Monsanto targets all online material that mentions the danger of its products. According to the court papers, the company launched the program under the name Let Nothing Go. Through third parties, it employs individuals with no connections to the industry to defend Monsanto online. Here's the allegation again. Earlier, we spoke to Timothy Litzenberg. He's a lawyer for one of the plaintiffs.
The Let Nothing Go program, which handles negative comments on a microscopic level. It's Monsanto's goal right now to let no negative comment, even on the internet, go unnoticed and unaddressed. And my understanding is there's typically a series of intermediaries that ends up with folks that will be willing to make supportive comments. It's very suspicious. If you look at negative press coverage of Monsanto online and you look at the comment section, you'll see people from across the country coming out in favor of Monsanto. It's a housewife from Texas, or it's a farmer from Iowa. I don't know anything about these individuals, but given what we know, certainly suspect that they are being compensated or incentivized to provide those comments.
Facebook plans on hiring 3,000 more people to monitor the social media site. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg wrote in a post on May 3rd, quote, "Over the last few weeks, we've seen people hurting themselves and others on Facebook, either live or in video posted later." A Cleveland man streamed himself killing a random person on Facebook Live in April, and the video was posted for more than 2 hours before Facebook took it down. Later that month, a Thai man streamed himself hanging his daughter off the roof of a building on Facebook Live. That video was posted for more than 24 hours before Facebook took it down. Zuckerberg wrote the incidents were, quote, "heartbreaking." Zuckerberg says the 3,000 new hires will join an existing team of over 4,500 people to monitor Facebook for posts involving violence, hate speech, and child exploitation.
I love you. I love you was the first thing Amber ever said out loud, and it was to this donkey.
They give children like Amber a lot of confidence.
The 6-year-old is a twin who was born prematurely at 26 weeks and suffered from complications at birth. It caused her to need a tracheotomy, a tube in her neck that helps her breathe.
Because she couldn't breathe properly, she was ventilated, and she was a very naughty baby. She kept pulling the ventilator out, so that's what's give her the scarring on her airway.
Amber never said a word until she met her 4-legged friend at this donkey sanctuary. Her time here is therapeutic.
He makes you feel good, doesn't he? Yeah.
Since their first introduction, Amber's become a lot more confident.
Have you enjoyed seeing him today, Amber?
And it led to finding her voice. I love you.